Hey, everybody, and welcome to the April Soul Shift Coaching and Debrief. This is where I answer your questions, and I want to thank you for the questions that came in. Some of you are new this month, so I want to remind you do have an opportunity once a month to ask a question. We do ask that those questions are related somehow to class. Otherwise, it's sort of a universe of possibility, and sometimes it's hard for me to answer because I'm very experienced, but I don't know everything. And so that's also my caveat here. When I give you this coaching, it really is just my best thinking. And so as with everything and with every teacher, I think, if it resonates with you and makes sense with you, great, incorporate it, work it into your wisdom tradition. If it doesn't make sense to you or you don't like it or it's not useful, leave it and move forward. That's what I do with what I learned too. If I have a teacher who shares something and it's like, yeah, you know what, that makes sense, that resonates, or I don't know, I feel differently about that. So you don't have to take my wisdom as the only wisdom. It certainly is not. But I do my best in these audio sessions to kind of fine tune my thinking and to offer it in as clear a way as I can and as openly and transparently as I can too. So diving right in, got a couple questions about Vogels. Remember, Vogels are the double terminated crystals, wider at the feminine end, more narrow at the male end, the masculine end, representing duality and integration. It's something that we use for energetic removal or extraction. And so from Desiree Cole, would it be possible to use the Vogel to extract energy from a space like you would from the body? Can you walk around the room or the house doing the motion, or is it more effective to use that technique with a layout of the home to extract from in a distant session? These are great questions. I have not used it, candidly, for spaces, and I have not really done distance work with it. So what I would say back to you is give it a go and keep me posted, because I absolutely believe in the efficacy of distance work, healing work, using either a mannequin or something else as a proxy, right? Because energy is energy. And a lot can be done remotely. I mean, we all know the power, I think most of us know the power of remote Reiki healing. And so I would love to hear more, Desiree. I say give it a go and see how it works for you. Always remember, though, to have a place to remove the energy, to dispose of the energy, whether that's opening a portal or I've taught you some different techniques this last month. Remember, I taught you how to return it to the earth. You can fill a chalice with some water and return the energy, the unwanted energy into the water, and then pour out the water into your garden or something like that, give it back to the earth. So just make sure you're doing that. You don't want to be extracting energy and just leaving it there. You know what I mean? If you've seen how energy works through plant medicine ceremony or other experiences you've had, multidimensional experiences, it would be a lot easier to explain this to you. But when you have those experiences and you start to learn how energy works, it can hang in a room. And so you want to give it a place to go and permission to go. So that's very important. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, these are things we've talked about in previous classes. You're always welcome to go back and purchase previous months of classes. And Alexis is your go-to person. So if you're like, I want to learn about Vogels, post that in our Facebook group. She will link you to the specific classes you should go back and watch. And you don't have to go back and buy everything, but you can go back and purchase back classes for the same price per month as you pay today, on topics of specific interest to you. Because a lot of this stuff I have covered. So if you're new and you're like, whoa, Vogel, hey, what's extraction? I don't know what's a portal. If it's not interesting to you, it may not be relevant to you. But if it is interesting to you, please work with Alexis and she will get you access to the previous classes. And then Catherine P. said, hi, Athena. My question is the Vogel only made for work with the chakras, or can we use it to unblock ourselves in life? If we feel stuck, or if we feel that our life is at a crossroad, can we use the Vogel to unblock the energy? Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Catherine, for all your kind words, by the way, too, in the question. You absolutely can. And it isn't just for the chakras. I used the Vogel on my shoulder and it healed. I was having really intense rotator cuff pain that my doctor kind of threw up her hands. She's a great orthopedist. She's very well recommended here in Los Angeles. kind of top of her game. And she was just like, I don't know what to tell you, so here's some pain meds. And I was like, no, I don't. My mom has a lot of pain and takes a lot of medication and has a lot of side effects, and from back surgeries and neck surgeries and all kinds of things. And she's like, down the road, it might need surgery, but for now we can manage it with medication. And I was like, that's absolutely not the right answer. So I took her prescription and went on my way, but I decided I was going to try other things. And I didn't take the medication. I've done energy work and it's healed. Now, is that always going to happen? No, but I just had this feeling that it was a blockage of energy. And I mean, I literally couldn't sleep. And so I was going in with my Vogel every day and just setting the intention that whatever blockage was sitting there would be released, and giving it back to the earth and giving it back to the earth and giving it back to the earth. And I have full rotation in my arm. And I don't have a way to explain that to you other than doing what I teach you. So when I teach you things, on the one hand, I'm a skeptic, right? So, and I'm a scientist by training. I have a PhD. So on the one hand, I'm like, do what your doctor says and also do the energy work. In this case, for me, it was like, I just don't like to really overwhelm my system with pain medication if I don't have to. And there was part of me that kept saying there's another way. And I'm really glad that I indulged that. Now, in cases where you have severe pain and you literally can't move, of course, medication is a powerful antidote, and it should be used where it needs to be used. And I was at about a 7 or an 8 out of 10 on the pain scale. So I was getting close to saying, maybe I just need to take the meds. But in this case, I'm really glad that I didn't. And I absolutely believe that the energy work is what cracked the code. So take that for what it's worth. Lori Ingram on moon phases said, we learned all about the moon phases and their tools, which we did last month. I know what my specific, in April, I'm recording this in May, but this is for April class. I know what my specific moon phase is, what the tools are. What I'm unsure of is whether this implies that the tools for the other moon phases are not important to me. This is interesting. Or whether I should also be using them to meditate or set intentions during those moon phases. So here's my 2 cents, Lori. I think all the moon phases are important to all of us all the time, and especially to women, right? Because of our menstrual cycle, the moon phases correlate directly to the phases of our own cycles. So I would say they're all relevant to you. To what extent they're important to you? You have certain moon phases, obviously, that are more important to you based on your natal chart, the time of your birth, and facets and sort of landmarks like that. But I would say that all of the moon phases are significant to you, maybe not on a macro level, like your whole life, but on a micro level, because you're going through these lunar cycles. And so if you're trying to create and build energy, you want to work with one moon phase. If you're trying to release and shed energy, you work with a different phase, right? So that's my best answer to you. There's what's relevant to you on a personal level based on your natal profile, and then there's what's relevant to you as a human being on this planet who every single month navigates lunar cycles. Excuse me. So that's why I'm making the distinction between the macro and the micro, because some things are very specifically relevant to you, but then some things are relevant to you just because you're on the planet. I hope that's helpful. Marty Hoover says, hi, my question is about opening and closing circles using wands, which is so great. I've gotten confused recently. I thought you had to use double terminated quartz, but it struck me that you're using selenite to open and close. That's right. Is that because it's protective, cleansing? Can we use any type of wand to open and close circles? It's such a great question, Marty Hoover. I'm so grateful for it. She's like, I'm confused. Maybe this would make a good bonus class. The uses of different kinds of cuts of crystals. Thank you so much for allowing us to ask questions in this forum. You're very welcome. And it really is a joy for me, Marty. And I'll tell you something. When you have a question, other people have the same question. Yeah, I've been teaching more than half my life. I started teaching at university level when I was 23, which is really crazy. I had graduated from college and I had been admitted to a PhD program at USC in Los Angeles. And part of my PhD program, I had a full ride out of fellowship. So they paid my tuition for the whole PhD. And in exchange for that, what I had to do was teach one class every semester to undergraduates. It was a joy. I loved it. And so I literally have been teaching adults since I was 23. I was only 5 years older than my students. But that actually was was successful. I think freshmen were more likely to listen to me than they were to people who were much older than them. So it was quite a smart system in hindsight. In any case, I share that with you because I've been teaching for a really long time, adults. And sometimes adults either are not aware of the questions they're holding, or they're hesitant to ask the question because they don't want to look like they don't know something. And my goal with you guys in this class is there's never a dumb question. You know what I mean? There's never a basic question. There's never a irrelevant question, really, because if you're holding it, somebody else is holding it. And they're probably just going, oh, thank you, Marty, for asking about opening circles, right? So always ask the questions. We do try to focus in these coaching sessions on questions that are directly related to class and the work that we do. But even that is kind of a larger umbrella. Like, this is related to class because I use these tools to open circles when we do ceremony. So if it's not making sense to you, I think it's so great to ask the question, especially if you're confused. As with everything, Marty, in metaphysical practice, it's our best thinking. I don't know that there's a tool that you should not use to open a circle. I have preferences, okay? And I have preferences for reasons. So I'm going to lay that out for you in my answer to you here. I use selenite. I use the selenite wand that Louis made for me years ago, that we've done replicas of for Soul Shift in the past. And I work with selenite to open circles because it is literally a sword of light. The whole point of opening a circle is to create a light circle, is to create a barrier, a boundary of energy that dictates what's allowed in the ceremony or ritual that you're doing or class and what is not allowed. And it's, I go further and I welcome the guides and the guardians of the directions in. That's a second layer. Some people just open a circle with a wand, which is okay. And they do it in different ways. If you travel around the world and you work with different teachers, you're going to see a whole host of different ways and approaches. And I don't know that anybody's wrong or right or anything like that, but I think we all have preferences. And part of it's based on our trainings too. For me, quartz is excellent for also drawing that boundary. Remember, you're just drawing a boundary, right? Quartz is extremely high vibrational. Selenite I love because you don't have to clear it. Selenite and black kyanite are the two crystals that clear energy but don't have to be cleared. You don't have to take care of them. They take care of themselves. And that's why it's kind of my favorite for opening and closing circles. But having said that, you can absolutely work with single terminated or double terminated quartz wands to open and close circles. And they don't have to be big. I mean, mine is a big, big daddy, but they don't have to be. They can be little pocket wands, like the alchemy wand that we had at Sage Goddess yesterday. Would be perfect for opening and closing circles. So I hope that's helpful for you. The only reason I don't do a bonus class on this is that I've covered a lot of this in previous classes and months and years. So if, a lot of people have been through single versus double, Vogel's extractors. And so I'll go back to what I said with Catherine too. If you would like to know single versus double terminated, there's a month of Crystal Masters that we can direct you to, and you can go and watch that class. And anybody who's listening, Alexis and I can direct you to the specific months when we covered content. I spent a month on Vogels. I spent a month on wands. I spent a month on the extractor needles. And so any of those back classes from Crystal Masters, you're more than welcome to access if you're new. But I hope this was helpful in terms of helping you understand opening and closing circles. And Molly Nicholson, if we're using a wand to open closed circles that's not selenite, how do we keep its energy correct without wiping it clean of all energy? I want my wand to hold my energy for my rituals, but only the good energy. Yeah, Molly, just run it through some smoke once a month. I mean, again, there is no scientific test that's going to say, well, you removed all the energy, including your ceremonial energy, versus just clearing off kind of what is unwanted, right? What is unusable energy, or what is energy that you would not want attached to your tool. So I would just say, once a month, I just take my copal smoke or my salvia piana smoke, or my, my white sage smoke, or my frankincense smoke, and just overall the tools. But you notice I don't really open and close circles with non-selenite tools. Now, if you got the Summer Solstice kit, the Letha kit, that's coming with a selenite wand, and that's a great one. That's like a 6 or 7 inch wand that you can use for the rest of your life to open and close your circles. So I do like my selenite. I do. I mean, if you want to know my ultimate preference. But in a pinch, quartz is great, and quartz is programmable, right? So we can program quartz to operate and function as any other crystal would. And so that's a nice alternative too. Great questions, by the way. Love this conversation about wands and tools and moon phases and vocals and all of that. And hopefully between these answers and the back classes of Crystal Masters, all of your larger questions about this can be answered too. Carrie Lucero says, hi, and thank you for your kind words, darling. I appreciate you too. She says, dissolution is coming to a close this week. I've been feeling rushed to cleanse away all that is not well with my soul. Can we still continue to cleanse with the water element through May? Things keep resurfacing, and I'm starting to feel anxious. These unwanted aspects of myself are not cleansed away from my mind. It seems like the more I try to rinse away what isn't serving me, the more I feel panicky. If not gone by May, is it too late for the white rose phase? No, it's not too late at all. And I'm so glad you asked this, Carrie, because it's a fantastic question. I hope my answer is as fantastic as the question. All energy work is iterative, meaning it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now that frustrates people because people want it to be one and done, and I get it. I'm like that too. I'm very type A. Like, okay, I did it. Poof, boom, pow, I'm all done. But you're human. I've said this a couple times, but I've said it in different places, so I want to say it here too for our collective. If you're alive and you're human on this planet, you are going to accumulate energy that needs to be released. So there is no way for any person in Soul Shift to be done releasing right now. And so hopefully that releases the pressure valve for you, right? This isn't just you. I'm probably accumulating stuff this week that's going to have to be released. So can I not do it? Now remember, we're still in the water phase here through separation. And water is the element of cleansing, purification, and renewal. Now we moved from Pisces to Scorpio, right? So now we're doing a different kind of cleansing. This is still a deep cleansing that we're doing. So just because we had that really powerful release at the end of April, which hopefully you were there. If you have not done the last class of April and you're in Soul Shift, I need you to do it. And I don't often say this, but I need you to do that class. I need you to at least watch it. I know at any time there's a group of people who aren't up to where we are in class for different reasons, and I'm never going to be one to pressure you and say you got to keep up and you got to do the thing. But there are certain classes that are core to the work that we do, and the last session of April in Soul Shift is core to the work that we're doing. So I would love an update from you. After doing that ceremony, how are you feeling now? Because you submitted this question before that ceremony. So that's my 2-pronged answer to you. First of all, do the last class of April if you haven't already. You may have already done it, so that's the first thing. But for other people who are listening. And the second thing is, this is an iterative process, meaning we're going to get to the end of the year and you may still be going back to April classes. You may still want to do that releasing ceremony again, and I don't blame you, and I probably will too. So don't feel rushed. Keep working the progress. It's almost like overlapping cycles, if that makes sense. So the stuff that you are ready to release and you have been releasing, you're working that stuff and you're moving into the next phase, while the new stuff has to be alchemized and processed. So it's like continually, some part of you is working the process from January with new stuff that's coming up, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And then some part of you is finishing the cycle with what you've been working on since January. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense, because I know it's complicated. Like even in my own mind, I'm like, oh God, I hope I'm not making this worse. But just new stuff's going to come up. So what are you going to do? Wait till next year and start again? You know what I mean? Like, no. So I'm laying out steps for you this year that you can then take and say, it's a 12-month curriculum, but you might later be able to figure out how to do this in 12 days, right? Like I've learned how to take Athena's year-long curriculum and make like a little fast track process that I can funnel stuff through when it comes up. And I recommend that you do that. This doesn't have to be a year-long process. I'm taking you through it over a year because I like to do it nice and slow, and it gives me a chance to teach you a lot of the corollary concepts and to do ceremony with you and to really help this process seep down into the groundwater of your being. But it can also be a very, simple and kind of instantaneous process too. And the cycles are going to overlap. And as long as you know that, I don't think it's overwhelming, right? And what happens to me now in my life just personally is something will come up and I will literally almost say to myself, gonna have to alchemize that. Here we go back to calcination, right? It's like, okay. But I can run that process while I'm working on separation of other things. Ray Collins, it's really energizing and freeing for me to be learning all that I am. Oh, that makes me so happy. She says, I think I've buried my intuition and my true self for so long, just raised that way, continue to live within a community that doesn't always understand or even accept what I seek. I've had this great feeling of urgency for transformation. So grateful I found this class. If I'm looking to really gain further release before the next phase, because I sense some residual yuck, any suggestions for effectively transmuting the fog, toxicity of old patterns, and residue of the past, perhaps using my Pisces sun and moon signs and new moon phase knowledge and leaning into balancing my natural ability to absorb energy and lean into the full and new moon energies to release. So all of that is yes. Part of what I said for Carrie might make sense for you, Ray, because there's always residual yuck. I mean, I think the way you put that is very accurate. And residue of the past. So for further release, what I would say is maybe do some parts of the work that we're doing a second time. And for sure, the moon phases, right? You're always going to have an easier time releasing during a waning moon phase up to the new moon. If you try to release, after that phase, when you're in a waxing phase, you're working against the natural energies. And that's not a problem. You can still do the work, but it can be frustrating, right? So you did kind of answer your own question, but that's great. I mean, it just validates for you that you're right. And so that's what it's about. I mean, the transmutation, when we say transmutation a lot, but when I really ask people, so what is transmutation? They're like, well, honestly, I don't really know. It's like, you're taking a lower vibrational energy and transforming it into something more usable, something lighter. That's transmutation. You're taking something through the transformation process to change its state or form. And so transmutation is the alchemical process. It's going through the calcination, burning down to the bone, and then it's the dissolution phase, which is, rinsing away, and then it's the separation phase. Okay, what's usable, what's not usable? And then ultimately we repair and reintegrate the energies into hopefully a lighter and higher vibrational form of its original shape or structure. And so I hope that's helpful. I hope my musings there, because it was a great question, but I almost think you answered your own question better than I did. Emily Flanders about core wounds. I'm having trouble identifying what my core complex is. I waver between anger, fairness, and being heard. I felt the energy definitely mostly in my solar plexus when we did the meditation. I also feel like I've brought pain in from the past life, from the womb. That may be the reason for my heart defect. How do we really identify our core complex when we're not sure? You get closer and closer and closer to it. There is a feeling you get when something lands where you're like, oh. For some people, it happens in therapy. It's happened for me in therapy before, where the therapist will kind of mirror something back to me, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, yeah, you nailed it. because you kind of feel it, like, oh, and it usually doesn't feel very good. It's like, yeah, I think that's it. For me too, like I will cry when there's an accuracy around something that I've identified. It's like, oof, I just got in there. I think I just figured this out. It's a boiling down for me that gets us there. You know, I had to boil through a lot of stuff before I finally figured out that my core issue is not being sure that I'm lovable, right? As I am. But I had to work through a lot of layers of stuff that looked like it was the core wound, right? In order, but until I got down there, and it's like, you know, your core wound is that you're not sure. People can love you just as you are, without doing things for them or achieving something unique, or just as you are, like as you wake up in the morning, right? It's like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, ooh, it felt like a sucker punch to my solar plexus. And that's kind of like, that's how you know you're getting there. Now, who's to say that that's really it and there isn't something else underneath that? It's just, it feels accurate to me, so I'm working with it. I don't know if that's a great answer for you, Emily, but that's how I do it. It's like, I feel like I've drilled down enough that if I can heal there, most of the challenges I have faced will start to unravel themselves, because a lot of it's like right there. Now, that's not to say that I would calcinate that, dissolve that, separate that, and then move through the process and stages of reintegration and go, I think there's something else. But again, you know, what I will tell you guys is this. I kind of want you to stop and give yourselves a little credit. Think about the millions and millions and millions of people who never even ask themselves any of these questions. You know, if you picture it as a series of concentric circles, or like those, you know, those Russian dolls where there's like a smaller doll inside and another smaller doll inside and another smaller, like, well, shit, how many dolls are in there, right? Most people are still working at the level of that first big 12-inch doll, right? And they don't realize if they take that doll apart, there's a smaller one. And if they take that doll apart, there's a smaller one. They take that doll apart down to like a 0.25-inch doll, 30 dolls in. Now, for some of those people, that would be so overwhelming that they probably would just want to give up. Like, excuse me, I'm working with this doll and there's 30 other dolls? Holy shit, right? I'm not going to be able to do that in a lifetime. Some of you are down to like the last 2 or 3 dolls here, man. You're scratching the core of that scab. And it's not a contest. In other words, the person who gets down to that innermost doll doesn't get a cape and a trophy and a trip to Jamaica. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, and I don't even know that they're going to have a better life per se. But I do think that healing requires us to continue to ask the questions. If I live to be 80 or 82 or 84 or 86, right, which is where a lot of my ancestors landed, you know, that puts me just over halfway through this journey. Now, who knows, right? But I don't think I'm done with my healing work. I think I'm doing a great job. I definitely am dedicating myself to it. And I know I'm working through these dolls and I'm opening it up and there's another one, and open it up, there's another one. And ayahuasca and certain things like that are definitely fast forward buttons on a lot of that. But it doesn't solve it all. It doesn't fix it all. And it doesn't transmute it all. But sometimes when you guys are really, to some extent, almost being hard on yourselves, and you're so far in to the goo, you know what I mean? And you're doing such a great job and you're wading through it. I sometimes want you to just hold the perspective that, like, there are people who will never even begin. And that's okay. But, and it's not a competition, but you are doing more, in my opinion, than a lot of people are able to do and are even aware that's possible. So I do want you to also just recognize how great you're doing, because it's easy to lose track of that. Chrissy Whistler has a great question too. Regarding our core wound, might we find a deeper awareness of what this is with the placement of Chiron in our natal charts. 3,000%, Chrissy. And if you remember from Soul Shift in March of 2019, I know this is a way back, I spent a whole month on Chiron and the core wound and the wounded healer. I would really recommend, now I think you may have been in Soul Shift at that time, so I would recommend that you go back to that material. And anybody who's listening to my answer to this question, if you want a deeper dive on this, we spent a whole month. This was March 2019, and again, Alexis can help you get to that content. Chiron is and there's two metrics of Chiron in your chart, right? There's the sign that Chiron is in. Chiron is represents the path of initiation in your chart. And this is about vulnerability and the willingness to surrender to our pain and our fear and our insecurity. It's a sign of how to become reborn in your own chart, and it tells you what your medicine is, what your gifts are. Now, Chiron is not a really personal planet. Remember that it spends about 4 years in each sign. So your sun sign and your moon sign are more personal to you because they spend anywhere from a couple of days to a month in each sign, right? But Chiron spends 4 years. So it's not telling you a super personal story about who you are and what your wound is in terms of the sign. But what house it's in does tell you a little bit about where the energy of the wounded healer might show up for you. Is it going to show up at work? Is it going to show up in your relationships, right? So if you want a deeper dive on this, it literally was our focus for that whole month. And so I think I'm glad you brought it up. And I think it's a great recommendation for people who want to do a little bit deeper dive on what it means to be a wounded healer and how to incorporate this wisdom into the alchemical work that we're doing this year. Brooke says, my question is pertaining to pendulums. I've had 2 different pendulums that have given wrong answers. I did the yes, no, maybe test. They were accurate. I'm just wondering if I should try different pendulums, or is there anything I can do? It's an interesting question. I would continue to try. I've had pendulums do all the right things, yes, no, maybe, whatever. And then when I ask a question, it's incorrect. And I've actually had one pendulum where I said, are you able to give me accurate guidance? And it said no. And I never worked with that pendulum again. I buried it, actually, because I thought, whatever's attached to this doesn't feel clean. So I would keep trying and ask it about its capacity to bring you accurate information. I do find that we develop relationships with them. I've always said that. And maybe you just haven't found the one yet. We also do have the capacity to override, I think, the pendulum's wisdom by the force of our own will. So be sure that when you ask a question, you're really open to receiving the answer. And I mean consciously and subconsciously. Laura Tincher, how do we revoke pan protection? It's an interesting question. And it's as simple as that. Yeah, I've shared stories with you where sometimes it can be too much. And so you can simply say, beginning today, spirit guides, I release that. I don't want to say that because I'm not trying to revoke mine. I like having it. But if you want to release it, just simply ask your spirit guides to help you release that absolute veil of protection over you. And then you can reinstate it whenever you'd like. April Trent, is it possible to have or make a chakra overactive by opening it up to too much energy? Some of the sources I've read in the past didn't mention overactive chakras at all, but other sources have said you can have an overactive chakra that has too much energy instead of just blocked. I think you can have an overactive chakra. I don't think it happens by opening it up too much. I think some people, because they have blockages in some chakras, the energy that moves through other chakras that aren't blocked can overwhelm those chakras. So in my experience, the best way to heal an overactive chakra is to heal the blockages. When there's even an easy flow of energy through the system, you tend to have fewer issues of overactive chakras. It's almost like a compensation. I hope that makes sense. It was a great question. They're all great questions. I'm really grateful for the questions as always. Jennifer, Ileana, my question is regarding holding the frequency when we're manifesting. Important question for right now. There are two things in my life right now that I believe will happen and keep seeing the signs everywhere. There's a human part of me, my brain, that says, what if they don't? That's right. I do often slip in and out of my survival brain. And when I do, I get scared that this could affect my frequency. My question is, how much wiggle room do we have when it comes to these automatic human thoughts that pop into our brains? I think you have wiggle room. I used to teach the 7-second rule. Anybody remember that who's been around for a while? It wasn't my idea. It came from a book. But I believe it's true, which is that after, this author says 7 seconds, after 7 seconds, a thought becomes a vibration if you hold it consistently. And then it goes out and it finds like vibrations and returns them to you. It goes out on that energy freeway I describe to you guys all the time. So what I tell people is you have 7 seconds to sit there and go, I don't know, maybe not, well, my mom said this, and then stop and course correct. I don't think it's good to sit around and doubt your dreams. And this is one thing I am vigilant about in my life. And I even, like, if I talk to Dave about something and he's like, well, I don't know, I'm always like, okay, let's talk about something else. Not to ignore him, but just because if I'm really, and so I have learned in my life, in my marriage, in my friendships, if I'm really working on something, I usually keep it pretty close to my chest until I feel like the frequency has been established, and then I can start to talk about it. But I got to get right first with it, if that makes sense. So, but if it's you that's starting to doubt it, maybe start practicing the 7-second rule. Just don't stay there. You know, it's kind of like that thing with energy, everything in moderation. Can you doubt things? Sure, but don't live there. Can you be afraid? Sure, don't live there. Can you dance with your shadow? Sure, don't live there. Vanya, dearest Athena, I was listening again to February coaching. You touched on something I'd love to understand more about, soul contracts. I've been in search of understanding what my soul contracts are for years, and the first time ever it truly clicked for me is when you said, my sun is in Leo in the 10th house, so I'm here to lead in a public way, and my north node's in Capricorn, so I need to be successful. I may not be 100%, let's see, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. I need to be successful leading in a public way and not nurture them too much as my south node is in Cancer. Yeah, so you did quote me correctly. I'm trying to make this as a formula, but maybe it could be so simple for us who are not experts in astrology. Would you be able to explain this a tiny bit more, how to understand a bit better what's our astrology, soul contracts, in professional life, in love and family? And thank you, Vanya. I appreciate you too. So to summarize what I said, I was looking at the sign that my sun is in, the house that it's in, and my north node to really understand why I'm here. And that is true. My sun is in the 10th house, which is the house of public leadership. If you were born between 12 and 1 p.m., so is yours. And my north node is in Capricorn. So my sole purpose for being here in this lifetime is to be successful. So that leads to what my statement was, which is I'm here to lead in a public way and to achieve in that process. And my south node is in Cancer. So your south node tells you a little bit about what you may have been here doing before in a past life. And we did talk about this north node and south node we did cover as well. So that may also be, for those of you who want a deeper dive on that may also want to be a back class that you want to purchase. I know I've been kind of a broken record about that, but we've covered a lot of really deep work, and sometimes it's worth it to go back and just pick up that class, or if you were in the class, it's worth it to go back and watch, because even if I do a new class on it, it's not new information. So I probably did a better job, or at least a more thorough job, in the context of a 2 or 2.5 hour class than I would in a quick refresh on it. But I do want to give you an overview here just to respond to your question. And then Alexis can help guide you back to the original session where that was. So your north node is what you're here to do this lifetime. Your south node is often a representation of what you were here doing before. And so I refer to the south node often as a trap, because if you're here doing south node stuff, remember the south node is the opposite sign of the north node, right? So they usually are sort of two sides of a coin or two sides of a mirror, right? So when I find myself doing South Node stuff, my South Node's in Cancer, when I find myself over parenting people, especially when they're not my children, or being nurturing to a fault where I'm not holding people accountable, that is not me on purpose. That's me falling into some old patterns. I'm actually here to help people achieve and succeed and not to be codependent with them. And so, and this gets worked out a lot for me in the process of teaching. Sometimes people want me to be a little bit more coddling, and I'm a naturally nurturing person. I have a very maternal way, and my Mercury is in Cancer, so I communicate like a Cancer too. But underneath that all, I am double fire and type A. So sometimes when I'm not able to do that for someone or not willing to do it, because coddling and nurturing people is not always the way to get them on the path to growth, right? So I try to balance, like, yes, I'm here to hold you and love you and be tender, but I'm also here to absolutely kick your ass into the next level, because you didn't sign up for a class on coddling. You signed up on a class of transformation and alchemy. And so how do I balance those two things? It's the same alchemy for you in your chart. So looking at your sun sign, which gives you a bigger picture vision of like what you're here to become. Your sun sign is what and who you are here to become. Your North Node is how you're going to do it and what success looks like. And when I was a coach, that was always the first question I would ask. I would sit down with a conference table full of executives, and I would look at all of them, and they would start saying, well, we hope you're going to do this, and we'd like to do that, and we'd like you to build a program that does this. And I would always look at them and say the same thing. After listening to them, I would look around the table, pull my glasses down and say, so what does success look like? How will I know if I achieve this for your company? And every time they would look at me like, it's like blank stare, because people are really good at identifying their problems. They're not good at identifying what success looks like. And so if you hire a coach to come in and go, well, here's all our problems, go fix them. And the coach goes, okay, so how will I know? Is your revenue going to increase? Are you going to have lower employee turnover? Are you going to have new customers coming from new segments and cycles who are looking for a new product? Are you going to be able to expand into other countries? Like, give me something to go on, right? And so I share that coaching example, which is very mundane, to tell you I kind of look at you the same way. Like, what's success going to look like? You're going to be happier in your relationship. You're going to find a relationship. You're going to lose weight. You're going to feel better in your body. You're going to be healthier and more comfortable. Are you going to feel less frustrated with the people around you? Are you going to, feel more connected to your creator? Like, what are we working toward here? And so I'm really glad that you asked the question, because it is time for all of you to stop and ask yourself what success looks like this year. If we get to the end of this program in alchemy, and so I'm sitting across the table from you and pulling my glasses down and going, great, thank you for laying out all of the challenges. What does success look like? That is my entire dharma. That's my purpose for being on this planet at this time. And I'm lucky because I've been able to do that work in academia. I've been able to do it in the private sector. And now I'm able to do it in the context of spirituality with you guys. And I absolutely know it's why I'm here. And I'm good at cutting through to get to the core and find the outcome that is mutually beneficial for the collective. So I hope this helps you take a look at Sun, North Node, South Node, and figure out, who are you here to become? What does that actually look like? And then how will you know if you're getting locked up in some old traps, right? If I sat there and mothered those executives, that is exactly not what I'm here to do. And it's also what they weren't paying me to do. They didn't want me to come in and mother them. They liked that as a Mercury Cancer, I'm able to deliver difficult news, but in a pretty package sometimes. You know what I mean? I always called myself the iron fist in the velvet glove. I can deliver really hard news in a gentle way, but it's still the iron fist, which is, we got to get from A to B. And that's what you have me here for. You're here to get to B. So I need to know what B is. I need to know what B is not, right? So that we don't end up working toward the wrong goal. And then I need to make sure that I'm tough enough to hold the line so that you reach that goal and feel fulfilled at the end of the process. So that was a really great question. Samantha says, at the time of the Crystal Masters class, I wondered if maybe cocooning might be a good practice before bed, especially for those who have high anxiety issues. Oh, I love that idea, Samantha. And I think it's really important, that's also related to the process that I do each day, which is called returning your energy or calling your energy back to you, right? It's like, get inside your little energy egg or your cocoon or your little bubble, call your energy back into you so that you feel reintegrated and that you can sit in the integrity of that bubble of energy and feel safe and held and protected. And that will help you sleep better too. And then when you sleep better, you get longer REM cycles, or at least you get adequate REM cycles. So your dream time activity is supported. And dreams are important, not because you need to remember them, but because you need to have them. It doesn't matter whether you really remember them or not, because the work is still getting done. It's like falling asleep during meditation. It doesn't really matter. You might feel ripped off, like, well, I didn't get to enjoy it. But it doesn't mean the work didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I hope that's helpful too. Sandra Ferrara, my question is about necklaces and the crystals we wear on them. Do they fill our aura? I guess I'm asking whether or not people can feel the energy from the crystals that we wear. That's a great question too. So remember, your personal energetic field is 12 inches around you, in front of you, to the sides of you, behind you, above you, below you, right? So if people are, and other people's energy fields are 12 inches. So if you're within 2 feet of each other, they can. Now, I do believe crystals emit a frequency that exceeds the size of the personal energetic field. So can other people feel them? They can. But people can feel you, and the crystals become part of your own personal energy field. So I don't know that they're feeling the lapis alone per se, or the citrine alone per se, but they're probably feeling the interaction of those crystals with your own personal energetic field. It's one of the reasons why, being socially distanced, the energetics of that, like, I haven't seen a single person talk about that this year, which is a little frustrating. But I haven't talked about it either. I probably should at some point. But we're not meant to be 6 to 8 feet apart from each other. It's almost like, it's weird. It's almost like a cosmic way of ensuring that we aren't interacting with each other's energy. It's just interesting to me. And then Crassy Welton. I enjoyed the wand making class, but I'd like to know how to use the wand with specific intention. Do I meditate with it or just set it in a certain space? That's a great question too. And this is another one where we had a whole class on wands. And I mention it because some of you are new and you may not know that we've had these really deep dives in our classes on some of these topics. So this would be another one where I'm going to ask Alexis just to listen to this audio and to provide the links to the classes in our group so that you can go back and find the specific one that you're looking for. So what wands allow us to do is send and receive energy. If it's double terminated, it can send and receive. If it's single terminated, it can send or receive. And so, yes, it's a matter of aligning your specific intention with the energy that wand represents. And that could depend on the color of ribbons that you use, the stones that you chose. Those all, along with your intention, reflect the purpose of that wand or what it's able to transmit or communicate. And so when you work with a wand, you can send and receive, or send or receive energy. You can also use your wands to open and close circles. And if it's a double terminated wand in quartz, it can be used to activate and deactivate grids. So, but stay tuned. I'll have Alexis grab the link for our wand classes, and then you can kind of choose, because we've had some different wand classes. I taught a whole class on Vogels. I taught a whole class on extractors. I taught a whole class on single versus double terminated. And then other classes too. I taught a whole class on generators, obelisks versus six-sided generators. So there's probably some interesting content from the past that would give you a more fleshed out answer to your question than I'm providing for you here, but I wanted to give you kind of the high level, and then you can decide from there where you want to specialize and get more wisdom and insight. This was fun, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it too. I want to thank you again for your beautiful questions. In this month's coaching, stay tuned. We do it every month, and you're welcome to submit a question next month as well. But thank you. I enjoyed sitting with these questions, and I hope my answers have been helpful to you. We appreciate you so much. All right, everybody, stay tuned. Lots more to come in May. Enjoy. We'll see you soon.